Welcome back, you shadow walker, you fire breather, you scarred soul still standing. This isn't for the fragile or the faint or the polished versions of people who never bled in the dark. This is for you, the one who tasted betrayal on your tongue and smiled through the salt. This is for the survivor who didn't just rise from the ashes, but sat inside the flames while everyone else held the matchbook. If no one's told you lately, I see you. You've been laughed at, buried alive in silence, discarded in rooms full of noise, where your name became a whisper behind their smirks. And yet here you are, laughing, not because it's funny, because they thought they ended you, and they were wrong. Spectacularly, pathetically, arrogantly wrong. They built it slow. Your funeral, piece by piece, word by word. You saw it. You heard them. The smiles that cracked too quickly when you walked in. The conversations that stopped just a second too late. The compliments laced with poison. The handshakes held like handcuffs. They thought they were subtle. But you've been reading people like books since your heart got ripped out and sewn back in sideways. You saw the casket in their eyes before they even carved your name into it. And you smiled. Not because you didn't feel the sting, not because you didn't notice, but because you understood something deeper than revenge. You understood that being underestimated is the sharpest weapon you'll ever carry. They didn't build your funeral with shovels. No, they used rumors, rejections, betrayals that sounded like blessings. They used silence. Oh, that silence. That space between their words where your name should have been. They thought, if they stopped saying you existed, maybe you'd start to disappear. But they forgot that some of us were born in the void. You don't vanish in the silence. You thrive in it. You learn to build in the shadows. You learn to rise where no light reached. You learn to sharpen your purpose while everyone else was polishing their masks. And when they thought you were buried, you were just planting your rage, growing it like roots, waiting. And then, the laughter, not theirs. Yours? Do you remember that moment? When the final insult slid across the table like a knife in a gift box. When they smirked like they'd won. And instead of breaking, you laughed. Quietly at first, like a ghost, like the storm before the flood. That laugh, that was your resurrection. That was the sound of every scar you carry turning into armor. That was the echo of a soul that's been stabbed, burned, used, and still chooses to stand, to fight, to win. You laughed during the burial because you knew something they didn't. You weren't dead. You were just getting dangerous. See? They thought they were writing your ending, but you were just turning the page. They never understood that some people don't die when you kill them. Some people become legends. Some people become warnings. You smiled while they built your funeral because pain is no longer your enemy. It's your engine. You turned every insult into fuel, every betrayal into a blueprint, every closed door into a wall you could climb or burn or both. They tried to bury you in doubt, and you grew weapons in the dirt. They tried to shut you out, and you built cities in the silence. You don't just survive now, you dominate. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them think they won. Because every time they said your name like it was a curse, the universe listened. Every time they tried to erase you, the stars redrew your path. Every time they expected you to fold, to beg, to bleed out quietly, you laughed. You learned that silence can be symphony, that rage can be refined, that death is not the end for people like you. It's the middle. They built your funeral, but you built your legacy. So now here you stand, not broken, not begging, not waiting for them to apologize, not looking for revenge. You've moved past vengeance. That's their game. And you don't play games anymore. You win. Quietly. Brutally. completely. This isn't about being liked. This isn't about being understood. This is about becoming the version of yourself they never saw coming. This is about becoming undeniable, untouchable. This is about walking into rooms like a storm they can't name. And you do it all while smiling, because you've already danced in the fire, because you know what it's like to lose everything and still rise, because you are the monster they made by mistake. And you don't need their applause. You don't need their seat at the table. You'll build your own kingdom, in silence, in shadow, in strength. Your smile is no longer softness. It's sharp, it's loaded. It's a weapon you wield when the world thinks you're weak. Because behind that grin, there's a history of war. There's a trail of nights spent wrestling your demons and shaking hands with your doubts and still choosing to live, to rise, to be. So here's the truth, the brutal, bloody, beautiful truth. They will always build your funeral before your future. They will always try to bury what they can't control. They will laugh when you fall. They will mock your silence. They will misread your kindness as weakness. They will mistake your patience for surrender. But you'll just keep smiling. Because you know who you are now. You know exactly what they tried to kill. And it wasn't just your name or your reputation. It was your fire, your edge, your presence. They were scared. That's what no one tells you. Fear wears disguises. It hides behind sarcasm, behind fake concern, behind praise that tastes like rust. They saw your potential long before you did, and that terrified them. Because some people can only shine when they dim everyone else. So they tried. Oh, they tried. They came with smiles, with questions disguised as landmines, with advice meant to steer you into quiet obedience. They pushed you toward the edge and acted surprised when you flew. But you never needed wings handed to you. You grew your own, made from pain and persistence and memories they thought would break you. You flew straight through the smoke of their judgment, past the ashes of who you used to be. And now, you don't rise to prove them wrong. You rise because you're done proving anything to anyone. This isn't revenge. It's rebirth. That smile you wear now, it's carved, not painted. It was earned in fire. It's the mark of someone who has tasted every flavor of betrayal and still finds the strength to bite back at life. You smiled while they planned your end because you knew something deeper than victory. You knew that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who's already been buried and chose to rise anyway. So let them keep watching. Let them keep pretending they don't see you now. Let them keep whispering, analyzing, doubting. You owe them nothing. Not explanations, not closure, not proof. They made their choice. They wrote you off. They built the coffin. And while they celebrated your fall, you rewrote your destiny beneath the dirt. There's a special kind of power in being forgotten, underestimated, ignored. It's clean. It's cold. And it lets you work in silence. Build in darkness. Heal when no one can see. And when the time comes, when the silence finally breaks and they hear your footsteps again, it won't be as the person they once knew. It'll be as something new, something evolved, something undeniable. Because you are no longer asking for space. You're taking it. You are no longer seeking permission. You're setting terms. You're not playing their game. You are changing the arena. And the craziest part? You're doing it calmly, quietly, with that same smile they mistook for surrender. But it's not surrender. It's strategy. They don't know what's coming. They don't know what it took to keep that smile on your face while your world burned. They don't understand the war you fought inside your own mind, just to stay. The nights where the silence was so loud you couldn't breathe. The mornings you woke up with every reason to quit and still stood up. The weight of your own doubt pressing on your chest like a stone while you move forward anyway. They don't know, because you never showed them. You never screamed. You never begged. You just smiled, while everything inside you shattered and reformed into steel. And now that same steel runs through your veins. You laugh during the burial, because it's not your grave anymore. It's your foundation. Every time they tried to bury you, they accidentally gave you more ground to build from. You stood on their doubt. You climbed out of their lies. You stood tall on the very silence they hoped would consume you. Let this burn into your soul. You do not owe your strength to those who tried to break you. You owe it to the version of you that refused to disappear, to the part of you that kept whispering, "Get up," when everything told you to stay down, to the breath that kept coming, even when you didn't want it to the fists that clenched behind your back while you kept your voice steady, to the eyes that stayed dry even as your heart cracked like thunder. That is who you fight for now, not them. You. You are not here to explain your pain to people who used it for sport. You are not here to decorate the walls of rooms you were never welcome in. You are not here to be tolerated, pitied, fixed. You are here to burn, to blaze, to become. And there's nothing more terrifying to the ones who doubted you than the sound of your laughter in the middle of the fire they set. Because now they know you didn't just survive, you thrived in the destruction. You learned how to find air in smoke, how to see clearly in darkness, how to fight with silence and win without a single scream. You're no longer the person they tried to bury. That person died, but they didn't get a funeral, because from that death came something more dangerous. You, unfiltered. You, awakened. You, armed with purpose, edge, and cold focus. That smile they mocked, now it's prophecy. It's the last thing they'll see before you pass them by. So now you walk through fire like it's a memory. You no longer flinch when the heat rises. You've been there. You built your home in the inferno. And when the smoke clears, they'll look at you and wonder how you did it. They'll try to calculate the formula behind your rise. They'll ask the same questions they once laughed at you for. They'll study your strength, mimic your moves, pretend they were in your corner all along. Let them. You owe no one the blueprint. You are not a teacher to the ones who hoped you'd fail. You are not a mentor for the architects of your collapse. You are the storm they didn't prepare for. The reckoning wrapped in grace. The calm voice of power that never needed permission to exist. And even now, they think you're lucky. That somehow you stumbled into your comeback by accident. They don't see the cost. They didn't see the nights you carved your heart out and stitched it back with hope. They didn't see you shaking under your skin, screaming without sound, dying without dying. They didn't see the war you fought while smiling across rooms filled with knives. But you remember, and that memory, it's not weakness, it's your fuel, because there's a version of you that never gave up, even when you wanted to. That version sat with the pain, didn't run, didn't numb, faced every brutal truth, every cold morning, every gut-punching silence. That version of you deserves this victory. You're not just living for yourself now, you're living for every piece of you that chose to stay when the easy option was to leave. And that's why you smile. You smile now because you know what you've survived. You don't need applause to validate your power. You don't need closure from the people who broke you. You carry your own narrative. You write your own resurrection. And now your silence is no longer misunderstood. It's respected. Your laugh no longer dismissed. It's remembered. Because people remember strength when it doesn't beg to be seen. You smiled while they built your funeral because you understood something they never did, Real strength doesn't scream. It endures. It watches. It waits. And when the time is right, it moves. With precision. With force. With clarity so sharp it cuts through everything that once tried to dull it. You never needed to shout. You let your scars speak, and they speak volumes. Let them call it luck. Let them call it fate. You and I know better. This was earned. Every second, every step, every brutal, bone-breaking, soul-shattering moment. You earned this fire. You earned this peace. You earned the right to walk into your future without looking back, and you'll carry that same smile, the one they feared, the one they mocked, as a symbol of everything you've become. And here's the truth they'll never admit to your face. They envy you now, not just because you rose, but how you rose. You didn't crawl back begging for a seat. You didn't need saving. You saved yourself. You rose with grace, with poise, with discipline that made them uncomfortable. You became the proof they hoped would never exist, the living contradiction to every lie they whispered. And that kind of comeback, that haunts people. Your smile now, it's their reminder that you are not only alive, but alive on your own terms. You are no longer digesting the narratives they fed you. You're writing your own gospel. You're building from the bones of what they tried to destroy. And that kind of strength, that's unteachable. That's earned in war, in silence, in solitude. That's something only the broken turned bulletproof will ever understand. Let them try to rewrite the past. Let them pretend they believed in you all along. Let them cling to revisionist history. You don't need to correct them. You don't even need to acknowledge them, because your life now is not about proving the past wrong. It's about proving the future right. The one you created, the one you fought for, the one they told you was impossible, and you built it anyway. You are not the story they told. You're the plot twist they never saw coming. They gathered to mourn you. You showed up dressed for war, and they'll never forget the day the one they buried laughed, because it wasn't over. Not even close. So now what? What happens after they built your funeral and you smiled? After they buried your name and you laughed? After they closed the doors and you kicked them off the hinges? I'll tell you, you live. Louder, stronger, colder, cleaner. You live like you've seen death and denied it. Like you've stared into the face of failure, betrayal, humiliation, and walked away with something more valuable than forgiveness. Clarity. You know now. You know who's real. You know who clapped with clenched teeth, who prayed for your peace while hoping for your collapse, who smiled at you and passed your name to the fire when you turned your back. And the truth is, you don't hate them. Not anymore. Hate takes too much, and you've already paid too high a price. You don't burn for revenge, you burn for progress. You burn with a fire they'll never understand, because they never had to build themselves from bone and silence. You did. And now, you're something different. There's a point where pain stops being pain, where it becomes identity. Not a wound, but a weapon. Where your past no longer drags behind you like chains, but walks beside you like a shadow, constant, quiet, but loyal. Because your past knows. It watched. It was there for every loss, every betrayal, every fake friend, every room where you were laughed out before you even spoke, and it stayed. And now it walks with you, not as a weakness, but as a witness. You smiled while they built your funeral, because your soul already knew you weren't done. You just hadn't started yet. The world thinks strength is volume, that it's about how loud you scream, how many followers clap, how bright you burn. But you know better. You know the strongest ones are forged in silence, in stillness, in nights where your hands shake and your voice breaks, but you move anyway. That's real power. That's the power they'll never teach you in books or boardrooms or speeches. That's the power they'll never respect until it crushes everything they built on lies. And now you're here, standing, breathing, unbothered. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it hurt and you kept moving anyway. That's what separates you. That's what makes you a storm and not a statistic. They threw everything at you, didn't they? Every backhanded compliment, every cold shoulder, every fake "I'm proud of you," every closed door, every ignored message, every opportunity handed to someone less qualified but more liked. You took it, all of it, and instead of breaking, you studied it. You filed every memory like a weapon. You became fluent in silence. You turned rejection into redirection. You built where they left you broken. And when you returned, you didn't come back for revenge. You came back for everything they said you couldn't have. They built your funeral thinking they were ending you. But you were becoming untouchable, unstoppable, unshakable. Becoming the version of yourself that doesn't need their validation, doesn't need their invitations, doesn't even need to be seen, because you see yourself now, fully, finally, and that is more terrifying than anything you could ever say. You smiled while they built your funeral because they mistook your silence for surrender, because they didn't realize some people don't break, they harden. Some people don't die, they transform. And now, you are the embodiment of everything they tried to kill. Confidence, clarity, power, purpose. They gave you no credit, no spotlight, no handouts. Perfect. Now, they can't take credit for your success. Now they can't say they made you, because you made yourself. And that's the kind of success that lasts, that echoes, that digs under their skin in the quiet moments when their own lives feel empty, that haunts them when they scroll through what you've built and realize they tried to end it before it started. And still, you rise, still smiling, still silent, still standing. And now, here's the part that scares them most. You're just getting started. All this time, you were planting seeds in the grave they built for you. And what grows from that kind of soil? What blooms from betrayal, loss, silence, isolation? Something rare, something dangerous, something divine, something that doesn't wilt under pressure, something that doesn't need light to flourish, something that rises from darkness, fed by fire, rooted in grit. You smiled while they built your funeral, because part of you already knew. This wasn't the end. It was the opening chapter of a legacy they won't be able to erase. You laughed during the burial because it wasn't your death they were witnessing. It was your origin story. So go now. Move with purpose. Speak when you must. Stay silent when it suits you. Smile with your scars showing. Walk like every step erases the doubt they buried you in. You're not rising from ashes anymore. You're walking on top of them. They tried to bury you, but they forgot. You were the fire the whole time.